Welcome back to Burden Hill. It's the sleepy little town of quiet streets, old farms, family pets, and things that should have stayed buried. Because beneath the lawns, the woods, and the graveyards, something ancient is waking up. The rats are organizing, the crows are making deals, and the dead refuse to stay dead. And standing against it all are the beasts of burden, a group of dogs and cats sworn to protect a town that barely knows they exist. But when their paths cross with demons, goblins, ghosts, and HELLBOY, they may have bitten off more than they can chew. They mean well and all, but when the darkness knows your name, there's no place left to hide. Hey guys, I'm back. You're back. The beasts are back. Ben Affleck. It's your faithful host, Juan, and today we're continuing Beasts of Burden. That's right, Volume 2. Written by Evan Dorkin with art primarily done by Jill Thompson. There is one issue with a different artist, and I'll introduce that when we get there. But yeah. Also, friendly reminder that animals do occasionally get hurt in this series, so forewarning if that's a bit too much for you. Anyway, before we begin, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel in order to stay in the loop with all the latest videos. But enough with all of that. Let's jump right in. Our story opens on a quaint farmstead in the Pennsylvania countryside. But things are not as peaceful as they seem. Bursting through a barn wall is a Nosferatu-looking creep, fleeing away from HELLBOY, the legendary red-skinned, half-demon paranormal investigator. HELLBOY chuckles as the vampire erupts into flames, the darkness being burned out by the bright light of the sun. The Amish owners of the farm tremble over the charred body, but the veteran detective assures them that their kids should be safe now. HELLBOY's about to turn and leave when an aged, silver-haired dog appears out of nowhere, tugging on his jacket. The canine darts over to the woods expectantly, but the farmers warn HELLBOY that they've never seen that dog before, but they do know that that forest is bad news. But it's gonna take a lot more than that to scare off this hero. He follows the old dog into the trees, but in just a few short steps, he manages to lose track of the animal entirely. Odd, for sure, but more concerning are the sudden howls that just randomly started. HELLBOY pulls out his oversized gun, and he tears through the overgrown thickets, stumbling upon the Beasts of Burden, the scrappy pet detectives sworn to protect their community from the nefarious supernatural forces. Dimphna, the black witch cat, sniffs out the stranger's cloven hooves, and she determines that he's not a threat. The animals breathe a sigh of relief. All except the ever-skeptical Pugsley, who isn't exactly convinced a demon guy can be cleared by a simple smell test. But the others ignore him, and HELLBOY is welcomed into the group. Ace, the husky leader of the troop, fills him in on the pertinent details of what exactly is going on here. Namely, that they're all junior apprentices in the Wise Dog Society. Cats included. But no, they have no idea who the gray dog HELLBOY mentioned is. They're here in the woods today, investigating an abandoned tunnel where multiple dead cat bodies were found, strewn out in disturbing positions. Their mentor, Miranda, left to go report this to the society, but that was 2 weeks ago, and they haven't heard from her or the Wise Dog since. In any case, the animals follow Hellboy's lead into the tunnel. They guide him to some kind of old rail car, covered in graffiti. Apparently, there's another entryway on the inside, but they haven't been able to open it. And they're referring to a rusted-out door, surrounded by rat droppings. Dymphna also detects faint traces of magic, but like I said, they have been unable to get through. Hellboy inspects the door for a moment, and he signals for the animals to stay back. And with an effortless tug, he rips the entire door off the wall. The party cautiously steps inside. This is not at all what they were expecting. They're looking at a complex network of deep underground tunnels. Hellboy points out that one of the passageways looks relatively fresh, indicating recent activity. Pugsley exhales a big dramatic sigh, sarcastically asking if that's the way they gotta go then, huh? Rex snaps. The Doberman has had it up to here with the complaining. He tells the pug that if all he's gonna do is bitch, he should just stay home. It's no wonder his human has just got a new puppy. Ace tells Rex to take a breath, but the damage has already been done, and Pugsley quietly looks at the ground with a hurt face. When the crew finally reaches the end of the hallway, they discover an open room full of gross yellow chairs, candles, papers, and bottles. But more critical than that, Dymphna finds dark magic artifacts and clear evidence of past rituals. The dogs, for their part, crowd around a dead rat covered in maggots, and they try to get Pugsley to come over and take a look. He's been pouting in the corner by himself, but perhaps less alone than they thought, 'cause all of a sudden, the wall the pug was leaning on comes alive. It's a skull golem! Hellboy knocks it apart with a single punch, but several others gang up on him, shooting their dense dirt from their faces. The apprentices jump into the fray to lend support, and it's a chaotic free-for-all. But through it, they hear the cries of Pugsley, who's getting suffocated by the golems in a dog pile. Hellboy yanks him out of it, and he bashes the monsters down until there's nothing left but shattered bone fragments. Though Pugsley might have been saved, the animals watch in horror as Whitey is snatched away by the creatures through a void that they fill up behind them. Everyone starts freaking out, and Rex and Ace desperately try to dig through the wall, but it's useless. Hellboy tries to calm them down, but then they all freeze in place, because the tunnels start to ring with this horrible, scratchy, off-pitch singing. Without even a second thought, our heroes immediately rush toward the sound, ready to face whatever may come. And that would be a decrepit old woman holding a massive blade to Whitey's neck. She sits in front of a strange outline of a human body, and standing beside her like lieutenants are an assortment of skull golems and rats, including that giant berserker one, who the orphan and Dymphna burned the eye out of. Choking with fear, Whitey whispers to his friends that the old woman is off her rocker and wants to kill them all. The lady cackles, and she starts jabbering to the outline on the floor like a certified schizo. Hellboy sternly orders her to let the dog go, but the woman just starts shrieking, and she slices into Whitey's face with the knife. The poor dog whimpers in pain, and his blood drips onto the skull at the head of the body outline. And to everyone's shock, the skull begins to speak, and they recognize his voice. It's that goofy warlock guy from last time. Apparently, this old lady was his girlfriend back when they were still young and spent their days listening to Blink-182 and practicing Satanism. But anyway, life happened, and her boyfriend eventually died. To even get back to Burden Hill, the woman first had to escape her mental asylum. And that was after the warlock had already been reanimated, and then killed again by the apprentices. But whatever the case, when she got here, she fell under the guidance of the mysterious Master voice, which is the dark epicenter of all other evil in the town. But now, the woman announces, it's time for the final sacrifice. She raises her knife and tells Whitey goodbye, and then she slits her own throat over the skull and outline. Instantly, the ceiling starts to collapse, and the entire tunnel shakes like an earthquake. Ace grabs the petrified Whitey, and everyone runs for their lives. All but Pugsley, who, against every instinct in him, lingers for a moment. And the talking skull calls him an ugly brute who's going to die alongside his friends soon. The rest of the animals don't know what's going on, though, and they fear Pugsley lost. But to their relief, the pug soon leaps out of the dirt and dust, carrying the woman's spellbook in his jaws. Hellboy lets out a hearty laugh, and he picks Pugsley up, petting him all over for his job well done. But the danger is not over yet. Dymphna narrows her eyes and yells at Hellboy to get his matches out. And it only takes another second for the rest of them to catch on, as hundreds of clawed feet pitter-patter through the caverns toward them. Disgusting subterranean rats, soldiers from the Rat Kingdom. But Hellboy does what he's told, and he lights up his matches. The spark, which Dymphna uses her powers to amplify into a massive fireball, which scorches the rodents like a filet mignon. Our heroes practically skip outside in joy. They made it, and they couldn't have done it without each other, and they couldn't have done it without Hellboy. But the victory celebrations are cut short. A loud, booming voice calls them all idiots. Yeah, it's the warlock guy, resurrected, again. Though he doesn't look like a man anymore, more like a tower-sized slab of moving black stone. Hellboy tries to punch him, but it does nothing, and he gets pummeled. But he recovers quick, and the red-skinned adventurer hits the stony mass with a mean right hook. It even draws blood, which the warlock screams shouldn't be possible. And as if realizing something, he abruptly turns to Pugsley and starts aggressively chasing after him. By this point, Hellboy has seen enough, and he rounds up for a massive uppercut which splinters the warlock into a million little pieces. The animals circle around the pug, eager to know what he did to trigger the monster so bad. A little embarrassed, Pugsley explains that he got a little upset when the skull was calling him names, so he lifted up a leg and let loose on him. The apprentices are astounded. That brash action must have contaminated the ritual and critically messed things up for the villain. But as the friends discuss this, Hellboy catches sight of that silver dog again in the trees. He begins to follow it, and Pugsley trips over himself, sprinting as fast as he can after Hellboy. The half-demon looks down at his little buddy, and he tells him to stay put. He promises that he'll be right back. And so the detective stalks after the dog again, but it disappeared completely on him without a trace. Hellboy shakes his head and puts a cigarette in his mouth. He digs around in his pocket for the matches he no longer has, and finds instead the spell book. He forgot to give it back to the beasts, which is a shame. They probably could have used it. Well, he knows that they'll give him hell just fine on their own. From there, we jump to many, many miles away, at the headquarters of the Wise Dog Society. The elders somberly stand over the deceased body of that same silver dog in the woods. His name was Kian, and his heart gave out due to the strains of astral projecting himself to Burden Hill. Kian was trying to do an old wise dog trick to keep magically powerful passerbys in a certain area. In this case, HELLBOY in Burden Hill, in the hopes that he could solve the central mystery plaguing the town. But alas, he's gone now. And so the story ends on the heartbreaking scene of Pugsley patiently waiting in the woods for his friend, who he's sadly never fated to meet again in this lifetime. Alright, so this story and the next two after were short stories originally published in anthology books. And I'll make a quick note about the timeline here. While not officially stated, I'm 99% sure these stories were meant to take place back when the group was first initiated into the society. So yeah, continuity-wise, these are among their earliest adventures. Before they found out Dimphna was still alive in the sewers, before the wise dogs disappeared, you get it. Alright, let's get into it. Our first story opens on a chicken coop. The birds are loudly squawking about the need to catch someone, which is real inconvenient for Rex and the orphan, who are trying to monitor the chickens while keeping a low profile. Each of them has to resist grabbing themselves a plump dinner, but they restrain themselves, 'cause they're here on a mission. And from the woods, they spot their target. A nasty, green goblin strolling toward the coop with a devilish grin. Our heroes jump from their hiding spot, and the creature shrieks and scatters away back into the trees. The apprentices give chase, and from what we can gather from Red, who's watching, this ain't the first time they tried to catch the little bastard. In fact, right now, the goblin is having the time of its life, hooting and hollering like it's a game. Orphan and Rex are out of breath, just trying to keep up. But to add insult to injury, the mischievous devil keeps kicking dirt up at them. The animals charge on anyway, but the goblin's got a mean trick in hand. It pulls a branch back as far as it can, and when Rex gets close enough, the imp lets go and it smacks the Doberman in the face. The goblin then seizes Orphan by the neck and wrings it out like a wet rag. Panicking, the stray unsheathes his claws and goes ham on the gremlin's face. But he's getting choked out and starting to lose consciousness. But then, out of nowhere, Rex body slams the goblin, and the three of them go tumbling down a hill to the edge of a road. The goblin is knocked out, and the apprentices think they've won. However, then the night flashes white as a truck pulls up and an angry man hops out. Cursing, the man grabs Rex by the collar and drags him to the vehicle. This is Rex's owner, and he's not happy about having to drive around all night looking for his missing dog. Orphan and the goblin hear the pitiful yelps as Rex is thrown into the back of the truck. But in an instant, they're gone. In the wake of this, the orphan tries to broker a ceasefire with the Green Menace, but it's definitely a no-go. The goblin figures that it can take the cat by its lonesome, and heck, felines probably taste pretty good. So the monster barges after the stray like a maniac. With his life on the line, the orphan sprints through the neighborhood. He launches himself over a picket fence like a pole vaulter, and the goblin closely follows. But that's where it messed up, 'cause now the fiend is trapped in the yard with a growling Rottweiler. Orphan, for his part, returns to Red's farm, and they lament what happened to poor old Rex. It's moments like that which make the tabby okay with being out on his own. Be that as it may, while they're talking, they're surprised to see the bruised and battered goblin go limping past them into the forest. They decide to let it go. They think he learned his lesson. And so the story ends with the grouchy goblin being forced to endure the endless complaints of his snot-nosed kids, who really wanted some chicken for supper this evening. Our next vignette begins with three bright-eyed, energetic pups who are snuggling up together for story time. And the storyteller? Well, that would be the Old English sheepdog, Emrys. The elder tells the youngins that the story they're going to hear takes place in the Dark Ages of medieval Europe. Centuries ago, in a land long before dog toys, kibbles, electricity, or even tasty treats. The puppies jabber in excitement. How could such a time or place exist? Their mom hushes them, and Emrys continues. During the Dark Ages, there was no wise dog society either. In those days, there were two different classes of canines. The learned dogs, who were not wise, and the war dogs, who were not learned. But one day, there came along one who was both. A brave dog, named Beaton, who was trained by both a warlock and a warrior. He traveled with a human companion, a knight named Ulrich, and they fought many a battle together for their monarch, and in the process they became good friends. One day, the king selected the pair for a special mission alongside some others. The realm had been plagued by supernatural menaces known as the 9 Great Wrongs, and they needed to be defeated. The work was very hard, and many lives were lost along the way. Undead legions and demon boars cut down the war party until all who were left alive by the end to defeat the 9th and final menace were Beaton and Ulrich. Exhausted, they began their long journey home, coming to rest one day in an eerie village. In hushed tones, the townspeople whispered about the villainy of an evil wizard who lived nearby in a tower. Many brave men had tried to put a stop to his tyranny, but on the low chance that they made it through the treacherous woods, they were quickly slain by the magician's guard, a basilisk who turned to stone any man who dared look into its eyes. But being heroes at heart, Beaton and Ulrich set off at once to the tower. They fought tooth and nail through the forest, slaying wave after wave of gnashing beasts, and by the grace of fate, they managed to make it through. Facing a hill littered with dozens of statues, faces frozen in fear, the two of them had to come up with a plan. And so Ulrich carefully tied a blindfold over Beaton's eyes, and the trusty dog trotted up to the tower, using his keen sense of smell to make up for his lack of sight. The ghastly basilisk slithered out, and the two creatures gave battle. It was ferocious and savage, and all Ulrich could do was wait helplessly for his friend. With his heart pounding, the human listened to the terrible cries, a simultaneous roar and a deep howl, which abruptly cut off. Throwing caution to the wind, Ulrich rushed after his companion, and his heart broke when he saw what was left of him. Beaton managed to rip the neck out of the basilisk, but in the chaos, the canine's blindfold was ripped asunder, and he was turned into stone by the monster's evil vision. Enraged, Ulrich slayed the wizard, and in grief, he brought Beaton's frozen body back with him to the castle. And legend says this is where the tradition of humans placing animal statues began. And as Emrys tells the pups, there's really no way of knowing which lawn statues are completely artificial and which ones were once alive. One of the puppies objects that the basilisk was killed in the story, remember? But the elder notifies them that there are many of that accursed species roaming the globe to this day. In fact, Emrys claims to have seen one in the very woods of Burden Hill just the other night. He looked it dead in the eyes. The pups leaned forward to the edge of their seats. They thought it was impossible to gaze into the eyes of a basilisk. The wise dog nods his head. In a low whisper, he admits that the only way he could save himself was to immediately rip his own eyes out. The puppies jump away in fear and scramble back to the safety of their doghouse. With a twinkle in her eye, the mother thanks Emrys, and the elder smiles. Turning to Ace, he declares that he doesn't think they'll have to worry about the puppies sneaking after them on their patrols anymore. As the crew walks away, Pugsley asks the sheepdog if the thing he said about his eyes was true. Emrys pauses, and in a deadpan voice, he answers that of course there's nothing wrong with his eyes. Isn't it obvious? The final short story opens on a wide, picturesque open field. Bundled among the vibrant grass is a herd of fluffy white sheep, all alone. The apprentices surveil them from afar, not quite sure what is going on. They haven't seen a single human anywhere around here, so maybe the sheep are lost? Ace leads the animals toward the grazing livestock, slowly so as not to startle them. But in an ironic twist of fate, the apprentices are the ones who get jump scared when a Bernese mountain dog pops out of nowhere charging at them. The sheep bleat at him to stop, and the dog stands down. His name is Ben, and his job is to protect the sheep. Ben looks at the apprentices up and down with suspicion, but nonetheless, he leaves to go scout the trails up ahead. The sheep are very friendly, though, and Ace asks if they're lost. The livestock shake their heads. They're just passing through, that's all. Pugsley snarkily jabs that the only thing they'll be passing through is a coyote. But before the sheep can respond, Jack's eyes turn milky white, and he collapses. The sheep look down at the stiff beagle with sympathy. He must have been able to see them. Ace asks what they're talking about, and the sheep casually mention that they're all dead. The apprentices recoil in alarm, but the sheep urge them to keep their voices down. Ben doesn't know. You see, their barn caught on fire, and they were cooked alive. Ben tried to save them, and he died too. and ever since they've been endlessly wandering among the fields. Shocked, Whitey asks if they need their assistance to help move on. After all, that's what you're supposed to do. It's the natural order of things. The sheep smile. They're perfectly happy the way they are. One of them points at Orphan, asking Whitey if he considers the cat his friend. The terrier enthusiastically nods his head. That's what the sheep thought. But, you see, Ben told them about the great dog and his endless fields, and there was never any mention of sheep or cats there. So, when the time comes, wouldn't the apprentices miss their friend? Would they not also take measures to stay together, even if it meant foregoing the paths which will split them apart? The friends are silent, and the sheep wish them well. They're sorry they upset Jack, but it's time for them to go now. And so the animals watch as the sheep fade into the far horizon, becoming one with the peace around them. That night, the apprentices take turns watching Jack through the window of his house. He's been sleeping ever since the incident, and they just want to see him recover. They have good hope. Jack is strong, but man, whatever it is he saw, it must have left a deep, lasting impression on him. Alrighty, with having completed those early tales, we return now to the present, to a worn-down cemetery. The wise dogs are gathered here for an emergency meeting. Lately, things have been getting a lot worse. Lundy, a black Scottish terrier, tells the wearied Emerus and Miranda that the society can't afford to let them return to Burden Hill right now. There are simply too many dangers across the nation demanding their attention, and they need all hands on deck. Yeah, it sucks that they've basically ghosted the apprentices and left them hanging without a word, but from everything the rest of the elders have been told, it sounds like they got a good group stationed out there. Of course, some of the other wise dogs remain pretty judgmental about the whole cats in the society thing, especially a witch one, but Emerus and Miranda continue to vouch for them, and they're not going to relitigate that whole debate again. Instead, Lundy shares intel he's received about some serious business up north they must attend to at once. So, the rest of the elders get prepared to depart, but Emerus and Miranda hang back a moment. The sheepdog looks down sadly at the headstone of a man of whom he once clearly knew, but that's not what's eating him up inside. No. It's the sickness that he feels, that he's left the animals in Burden Hill all on their own. They're just novices. Miranda reminds him that they've got good heart, but Emerus gloomily looks away, muttering that alone will only carry them so far. And so we return to the quaint hill, where we find Rex nervously crouched over in a field. Dogs can't exactly sweat the same way we can, but if they could, Rex would be drenched right now. Truth is, he's being used as bait, and for whatever it is, it's enough to make the Doberman shake where he stands. Obscured high up in a tree, Dymphna urges him to keep his cool. Everyone's doing their jobs, and if Rex does his, it will be all over quickly, and no one will get hurt. Not exactly reassuring to the old pooch, but he holds his tongue. Still, like a statue, Rex begins to get hit with dandelion seed heads. Dymphna whispers at him to get ready, and we see some kind of invisible presence flattening the grass in a path toward Rex. Dymphna screams at him to run, and the Doberman sprints as fast as he can into the woods. In terror, he hears the spectral monster hot on his tail, snapping down branches in its relentless pursuit. Rex tears past a group of squirrels, yelling at them to take cover. But unfortunately, one of the critters doesn't quite make it, and he gets crushed like a tomato. It's absolutely sickening, but Rex cannot afford to look back. If he hesitates, he's next. He runs past an inconspicuous tree stump, and he screams the orphan's name and dives into some bushes. This was a checkpoint, and now the chase is onto the tabby. With a brave expression, the stray soars through the forest, and the monster thumps after him. He even dares to taunt the beast, which doesn't exactly go over well, 'cause the invisible creature roars with such ferocity that it sonically cuts through a tree and sends the orphan flying. Luckily, he lands on his feet exactly where he's supposed to be at the next stop, where Ace is ready and waiting. The cat ducks away, and the husky takes over. He smoothly leaps over a stone wall, but regrettably, the ground where he lands is littered with broken bottles. Ace's paws crunch into the glass, and he yelps in pain as he tumbles down the hill. The monster breaks through the wall and jumps on Ace, and he starts kicking his feet at it in blind panic. It finally materialized. A massive, lizard-like creature with sharp, jagged teeth and powerful, quick-twitch muscles. Ace dodges its chomp, and he pushes through the pain to run the final stretch of the route. He leads the monster over to an old, elevated, abandoned railroad track. It's a gamble, and it pays off. Inches away from its prey, the heavy weight of the lizard collapses the wood underneath it, and it falls dozens of feet to the ground, getting brutally impaled by wooden pikes underneath. Hearts still racing, the apprentices watch the blood pool around the creature. That was way too close for anyone's comfort. Apparently, that thing had eaten a confirmed 6 animals before they could slay it, and Dimphna informs the crew that it's a rare creature known as a wind slither. But as she's explaining this, she lets out a sudden cry of alarm. A murder of crows just descended over the body, and one of them plucks out the wind slither's eye and flies away. Dimphna curses at the birds. Those eyes are incredibly valuable due to their scarcity and incredibly potent magical properties. Pugsley rolls his eyes. He tells her that he's sure she'll find some more eyes to tear out for her witch crap or whatever. Dimphna begins to walk away, and Orphan reminds her that Pugs is just joking. But the black cat calmly responds that she's not angry. She just has her own affairs to go manage. Everyone else decides that they should get on their way as well. Keep up appearances back at home and whatnot. And luckily for Ace, his werewolf powers have already healed up his wounds quite nicely. Whitey, for his part, makes some off-color comment about what it would be like to be eaten by such a monster. He gets a little carried away, but he's just an eccentric, okay? Anyway, Ace dispatches those who don't have anything else to do to go spread the word about the vanquished enemy around the neighborhood. So we get like a compilation. Jack and Pugsley share the news with the hyperactive puppies, and Orphan and the getaway kid tell the rest of the cats. Red gets an update too, and, everyone's really happy to hear it. All except a pair of Pomeranians, who turn up their nose to Pugs and Jack. They are suitably unimpressed. Burden Hill used to be a quiet neighborhood, and in their eyes, the apprentices messing around with the supernatural is what brought the darkness to the town. Short-fused as always, Pugsley shouts at them that the darkness existed long before they started to fight it. Hell, it's been around a lot longer than even when their grandfather gave their grandma the sloppy white hug from behind. His words, not mine. So yeah, the Pomeranians are dumbstruck by such poor manners, and Pugsley struts off with a satisfied grin. We check back in with the cats. Right now, they're leaving Dig's house. Fortunately, he got adopted by a very kind family in the wake of his previous owner's demise in the cemetery. He's still too scared to go outside, but he's making progress. As the felines stroll on the sidewalk, they discuss the merits of street life, but they are halted when they come to realize that they're being monitored. From across the street, a human girl calls out to them. Muggsy, the cat on the left here, wonders if she has food, but Orphan is really weirded out, and he doesn't want to go anywhere near the girl or the two men she's with. Ultimately, Kid and Muggsy agree that he's probably right, so they walk away and enjoy the rest of the day that they've won for themselves. But where there's light, there's dark. Across town, there is a clandestine meeting taking place between the crows and the rats. As a peace offering, the birds drop the Windslither eye in front of the Rat King and his berserker. The rodents squeal in joy. The master will most certainly enjoy this. And so the coalition grows. The earth will fall, and from the ashes, the Rat Kingdom and the Kingdom of Crows will rise. Dark times are coming, and may God help the apprentices. It's evening when our story begins. In the shadowy woods of Burden Hill, Orphan and the Getaway Kid stoop cautiously over a dead rat. The blood is fresh, the neck snapped, and the heart, it was eaten out of the body. And they already know who's responsible. She just snuck up on them. Dymphna demands to know why they're trying to spy on her. Orphan straightens up, replying that of course he tried to follow her. She disappears every night, and no one knows what she's doing. How could he not be interested? Dymphna looks at him piercingly, mysteriously warning that he should know by now what they say about curiosity in cats. But Orphan won't let her push him away. Dymphna's always brooding about how the dogs don't trust her, but Orphan's right here in front of her, and she's the one who's isolating herself and keeping secrets. Dymphna sighs, and she resignedly surrenders that she supposes that they can come along with her, but don't say that she didn't warn them. The black cat leads them to a strange house in the middle of the woods. Its presence is truly unnerving, and that's not at all surprising. As Dymphna explains, this is the location where her witch coven operated. Before they were destroyed by the apprentices. Anyway, Dymphna has been trying to get back inside for what feels like ages now. It's incredibly important to her, but the place is sealed shut. She knows the spell used to unlock the door, but without hands, she can't turn the doorknob. Orphan suggests they bring in the rest of the apprentices, but Dymphna doesn't want them involved, and she shuts that idea down. The stray thinks for a moment, and smiles. He might just know where to get a pair of nimble hands. Naturally, this takes us to the alleyway dumpsters, where that young, bombastic raccoon from last video is rifling around the trash. His name is Hoke, and he performatively rejects the cat's petition to assist them in their quest. In his words, it's stupid, and they're stupid, and he's not going to be a part of it. But his mother sternly reminds him of all the important work the apprentices do for the community. Plus, it would be a good opportunity for him to learn some responsibility. So, yeah, there's a lot of huffing and puffing, but Hoke goes along. And the plan goes off without a hitch. It's a team effort, but it works. Dymphna chants the spell, Hoke works the knob, and Orphan and Kid push open the door. Great, that's the easy part done. But now they're facing an inexplicably moldy lair that looks like it hasn't been touched in years. But even more concerning than that is the fact that the front door mysteriously swings shut behind them. But there's no reason to panic yet. They just need to locate what Dymphna came for, and then they can worry about getting out. So they follow the black cat down a flight of stairs, into a room adorned with idols and paraphernalia of the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet. If the other animals weren't already super creeped out, they definitely would be now after Dymphna directs them to another flight of stairs. Down below is this ninth circle, where the witches practice the darkest of their rituals. Hoke takes one look at the stairway and decides that he's actually alright with just waiting upstairs for them. But Orphan and Kid take a deep breath, and they bravely follow Dymphna into her dark descent. At the bottom of the stairs, they find a dead cat, stiff on its back like a desiccated bug. Dymphna stares at the body and distantly mumbles that this was the den mother who watched over all the other cats in the coven. But they're not alone down here. A weak voice calls out Dymphna's name, and two heavily emaciated cats stumble out with hollow pits where their eyes used to be. Dymphna cannot believe it. It's her lifelong sisters, Rachel and Tansy. They're alive, but what happened to them? A demonic laughter fills the air, and the animals watch in horror as a 12-limbed monster with wings twists out of a cavern in the ground. And most disturbingly, the creature knows who Dymphna is, and he's very angry with her. She called and he came, but then she wasn't there, and he was trapped in this ritual circle ever since. Trembling, Orphan asks Dymphna what the hell the demon is talking about. The black cat hangs her head. Remember that fateful night when she sent the zombies after the apprentices? Yeah, that wasn't the first time she tried to kill them. You see, after the death of her masters, Dymphna was consumed with rage, burning hatred, which drove her to total and final revenge. She frantically flipped through the most occult books she could find, settling on the so-called Book of Torment. And with her sisters watching, Dymphna performed an accursed summoning for the Hellspawn, known as the Harrow. But nothing happened. Seething and desperate to salvage the revenge plot by any means necessary, Dymphna hastily grabbed the nearest spell kit, and she bolted away outside. Rachel and Tansy turn their empty sockets toward Dymphna, and they fill her in on what happened next. Moments after she departed, the Harrow finally did spawn. But without the one who called him, he was unable to leave the basement or return back to hell. And while the demon could not physically touch the cats who were left behind, he could and did corrupt the entire house around them. Rot, mold, infection soon filled the air. The den mother passed early on, but the harrow would not let her rest. Night after night, she was resurrected to attack Rachel and Tansy, and every night they were forced to kill her over and over. They couldn't escape the house, and soon it became too much to bear. They tried to take their own lives, but the demons stopped them even in that. In their misery, they became desperate enough to even tear out their own eyes. But they're still haunted by the monster's cruel visage, even without sight. Hearing all this, the harrow spits out laughing, and Dymphna screams at him to shut up. But the demon is joyful and unbothered. As he points out, he was only able to be drawn here in the first place due to the overwhelming venom within Dymphna's own heart. Defiant, Dymphna shouts that she'll pay for her own sins, but she'll never kneel before the likes of such a foul, disgusting creature like the harrow. And at the height of this tense standoff, completely unexpectedly, Hoke launches himself at the demon from the top of the stairs. A brave but impulsive move from the young raccoon, and the demon swiftly corrects it by swatting him to the floor like a fly. Dymphna calls to her sisters to seize the Book of Torment so they may perform a banishing spell. But now the harrow is annoyed. Of course he rotted that book away the second he could. How do they not grasp the situation here? The demon is the undisputed, unimpeachable master of the house, and he will not be removed against his will. Dymphna slumps her shoulders, and in a defeated voice, she floats the idea of striking a deal with the harrow. If the monstrosity agrees to return from the hell from whence it came, then Dymphna agrees to surrender her soul to him and follow along for all eternity. The harrow opens his mouth in a rotten smile, eagerly agreeing to the arrangement. He orders the black cat to make a blood oath, which will render the deal binding. Orphan begs her to reconsider, but Dymphna solemnly cuts herself and tells him to take the others and go. This is her decision, and she's made it. The witch rubs the blood onto her forehead, incanting the ancient oath as the giddy harrow plants a matching blood mark of his own. The house begins to rumble, and the foundation moans and creaks. The harrow demands Dymphna to come to his side at once, but she tells him to go kick rocks. You see, she tricked the demon. That wasn't her own blood she rubbed on her face. It was actually Hoke's. The harrow smiles. He's not offended. A prince of cheats always admires a fellow swindler. But he wasn't lying when he said that the house belongs to him. And if he's going, he's taking everything with him. Like water to a drain, the walls begin to collapse into a single point, and the animals are forced to run as fast as they've ever run in their lives, as the literal floor crumbles away behind them. Luckily, the house implosion rips the front door off its hinges, allowing the team to throw themselves outside as hard as they can against the overwhelming wind. Orphan is the last one to make it out, and just barely. Dymphna turns to Rachel and Tansy, who are calmly seated together, gazing at her. Their eyes have returned, and they're grateful. They quietly inform Dymphna that without the animating force of the harrow, they're not fated to last. In a broken voice, Dymphna stammers out an apology. It's her fault that everything happened the way it did. The sisters shake their heads. It's okay. Dymphna came back for them, and that's all that matters. The two whisper a final goodbye, and as the word leaves their lips, the flesh on their bodies dissolves into dust, and their bones gently fall into a pile. For the first time, Dymphna's unreadable persona collapses, and she breaks down into uncontrollable sobs. She tells the others that they can go now, and she puts her head down and begins to dig into the earth. But they don't go. Without saying a word, Dymphna's friends come to her side, and together they shovel the grave, which will mark both her sisters, as well as the remaining ties to an old life once lived and now gone. The final story, told in two parts, opens on what is essentially a letter or postcard written by a girl named Sabina. It's addressed to her mother, and it speaks of her journey to Burden Hill alongside her father and her brother. You see, a few weeks ago, her dad, Paul, received a call from an old friend who now worked as a cop in the small town. Almost disbelieving himself, the officer spoke of these strange occurrences going on in the hill. Peculiar noises, a mauled teenager, a murdered gravekeeper. In other words, a lot of weirdness, but no real leads and tons of dead ends. And that's why Sabina's dad was called in. 'Cause this is exactly what their family investigates. The unexplainable. Unofficially, of course, but yeah. The problem, though, is that they themselves haven't managed to find anything concrete in the hill. Absolutely, without a doubt, there is some supernatural shenanigans going on here, but after weeks of searching, they still ain't got squat. So they're getting ready to pack it all up and head home. And Sabina is actually relieved. Her brother, Russell, has been bored out of his mind. And their dad? Well, he's fallen back into his smoking habit. And he's been kind of irritable and short-tempered lately. Still, it's just one more night the family's got to spend. It's just too bad that they're doing it at the graveyard where that keeper was killed, though. Oh well. Sabina and Russell are just kind of laying about when their dad reprimands them that they're not here to just wait out the clock. They need to at least try. So it's about time to go get the shovels and go digging around for clues. The kids groan, but then a strange voice tells them that that won't be necessary. In the paranormal business, if you take your eye off the ball for a single second, you'll get caught flat-footed. And in this case, while the family was distracted, the apprentices snuck up and circled them. Ace tells the humans that they can lower their weapons. They won't bite unless they have to. The family exchanges glances in wild befuddlement, but the husky wasn't lying. In fact, the animals pretty much give the whole rundown on who they are and what their deal is and, their association with the wise dogs and all that, wherever they are. And the only reason they're being so candid about all this is because they've actually cleared the family already. Orphan had already tipped them off about them weeks ago when he realized he could understand what they were saying. 'Cause, well, based on past experience, mutual human comprehension is generally hella sus. So, the neighborhood cats, primarily Muggsy and Getaway Kid, monitored the humans and determined that they weren't a danger, at least for now. Sabina explains that she and Paul inherited a kind of ancestral sensitivity from her grandmother, a gift which allows them to tune into the supernatural world. For whatever reason, Russell didn't really pick up this sense, but if he holds onto one of their hands, he can also jump onto the same frequency. Otherwise, though, to him, the dogs just sound like they're barking repetitively. Pugsley interprets that remark as a great offense to their honor, and he's about to really let the kid have it, but Rex restrains him, and Ace quickly gets them back on topic. Namely, he advises that it's not wise to go randomly digging around these parts. The villainous Rat Kingdom is rumored to have a base around this location somewhere, and neither their magic nor their armies are to be underestimated. But not only that, as Dimphna points out, the cemetery grounds where they stand right now are the very same ones through which the ghoulish skull golems first resurrected that greasy warlock guy. The father thinks for a moment, and he inquires as to what kind of source could plausibly supply the power for all these dark machinations. Pugsley impatiently butts in that all they know is that there's this mysterious voice called the Master, but he's getting real sick of running around putting out its fires, but never confronting it directly. But, alas, there's not much the apprentices can do. And further, there's not much the family can do with this information either. However, there's a mausoleum nearby that they promised to check out, so they may as well go do that. Apparently it belongs to some weirdo kid named David, who was killed in his own bedroom one night. But surely the animals wouldn't know anything about that, right? Ace looks away in thinly veiled guilt, mumbling that he vaguely recalls hearing about something like that, but he's quite certain that it's not particularly important to anything. But the family is determined to check out the tomb anyway, and so they invite the apprentices to come join them. As per usual, Pugsley needs some extra convincing to go along. But Sabina finds him endearing, and she successfully manages to coax him. However, what they don't know is that they were being spied on the entire time by the intelligent eyes of a sleek black crow who flies away ominously into the night. Meanwhile, our heroes have arrived at the right tomb. Obviously, you can't exactly just waltz inside, but fortunately, Paul fancies himself a master locksmith, so he gets right to work on the door. But it quickly turns out to be more difficult than he had anticipated, so he has to pull up YouTube and search around for that one lockpicking guy. While they wait, Pugsley flags down Sabina. He has kind of a sensitive question for her. He knows this is a long shot, but is there any chance she knows of another paranormal investigator named HELLBOY? However, before the girl can respond, the air erupts into frenzied yowls, which must be Muggsy and Kid. The father urges his children to hurry after the apprentices, who are going after their friends. Sabina is hesitant, though. He always taught them to stick together no matter what. But Jack and Rex promise to stay behind with him while everyone else chases the danger. So, yeah, the kids run off, and the two dogs try to make small talk with Paul while he continues to work on the door. Apparently, he already knew who the wise dogs were. Guy he knew had an uncle who worked with one, or at least until they both got eaten by a Wendigo. In any case, on that cheerful note, Paul finally cracks the lock. He pulls open the door and is promptly met with a writhing clump of blood-red vines. The tendrils snap around the helpless man, and Jack and Rex rush to his aid. But with an explosive punch, the vines knock the dogs out cold like they're nothing. And well, poor Paul is dragged away crying into the tomb, suffocating under the tentacle-like grip. And as that's going on, Sabina and Russell sprint to a clearing inundated with dozens of rats. The apprentices have managed to isolate a small group of them, and they're put under heavy interrogation. Quivering, the rodents explain that they mean no harm. They're not part of the ungodly rat kingdom. What those guys are doing is just plain wrong, and they broke away rather than to be a part of it. The animals look at them sympathetically, but then Dimphna's senses go haywire, and she screams at the top of her lungs for everyone to scatter. In an instant, the ground beneath their feet rips apart as a giant ogre rat drills up through it like a machine. This thing is massive, practically the size of a full vehicle, and grafted into its forehead is the Windslither Eye. The creature, of course, is accompanied by the dreaded Rat Kingdom horde. But that's not the worst part. Not at all. It's Muggsy. He got trapped in the monster's jaw. And tragically, the rat crunches down hard, and the ill-starred cat is ripped apart under the terrified watch of his closest friends. No one really knows what happens next. Without thinking, without a plan, the apprentices just blindly throw themselves at the enemy. If this is to be their last stand, so be it. But Muggsy will not die unavenged. Sabina and Russell fully understand. They pull out daggers and start cutting down the vermin. There's no magic involved in this battle. It's just good old-fashioned, pound-for-pound, blood and bone. With everything he's got, Ace vaults himself at the ogre, tearing out a piece of its neck with his teeth. The blood gushes out of the wound like a faucet, and Sabina uses the opportunity to charge at the beast. Using her full might, the girl plunges the knife into its thick hide, and she in return gets kicked like a ball dozens of feet backwards. Her head is pounding, and her vision is blurred. But even so, she can still make out the giant rat galloping toward her like a predator. But then, in a split second, Jack bursts through the bushes in front of Sabina with her father's handgun in his mouth. She seizes it from the beagle and immediately opens fire, unloading several rounds into the abominable rodent. It collapses at her feet with a heavy thump, and all the other rats retreat back to the underground caverns, cutting their losses to fight another day. But it's not exactly a victory for our heroes. Muggsy is gone now, and further, Jack informs them about what happened to Paul, so within mere moments, they're on their feet again and running. They find Rex staring down the mausoleum, growling intensely with his teeth bared. And then they see it. Paul. He looks like a pale corpse walking. His skin is a sickly white, and there's blood dripping out all of his orifices. He staggers towards Sabina, muttering in a creaky voice about how he demands more blood. His daughter just looks at him in sheer horror, and she's unable to move, even when the man suddenly lunges at her. But Russell still has his wits to him, and he tases Paul to the ground. The man lies there impotently, and all these wispy fumes begin to rise out of him like steam. Sabina just cradles her dad's head, repeating to herself over and over that they never should have come here. Alright, we're here. The final part of the final story. There's a new artist now, Benjamin Dewey. He renders animals in a much more realistic manner, so they're going to look a little bit different this go around. But to get into the story, we open on what Paul saw after he was dragged into the mausoleum. The creepy voice of the master filled the air. He tells Paul that those who devote themselves to him, those willing to make the sacrifice, they will live on forever through him. But the disbelievers, they're filthy, and they'll be cast aside where they belong. Such is the case for the rotting corpse of the woman he's currently inhabiting. It's that warlock's crazed old girlfriend, the one who took her own life. Quite frankly, it's undignified, and so the master requires a new host, more befitting his higher sensibilities. And well, is it gonna be you, Paul? He asked. The man suddenly jolts awake. He's been unconscious for the past 15 hours, but now he finds himself in an anti-sea bear circle, surrounded by a zoo of animals carefully watching him. His kids are happy to see him, though. They were worried sick, obviously. It was the hardest decision of their lives not to bring him to a hospital. Too many questions and all that. But luckily, the apprentices knew where to take their dad. Red's farm. It's isolated, out of the way, and he's been growing specialty plants for, among other things, healing charms. Paul is still kinda groggy, but he thanks them all for what they've done for him. As that's going on, Dimphna, an orphan, trot up to the group, bearing some rather unfortunate news. While they were investigating the graveyard where everything went down, Rex got nabbed by his owner. Nasty little fellow, really. But not only that, all traces of the rats are gone. Their tunnels, the ogre body, it's all gone. All of it. Paul has no idea what they're yapping about. Of course, he wasn't actually there, but he also can't remember much of anything else that happened last night, outside of when the vines grabbed all over him. But as they're discussing this, with absolutely no prompt, Jack yelps, and his eyes roll to the back of his head, and he goes limp. Sabina starts to freak out. All she did was pet him. Dimphna reassures her that he's going to be alright. Sometimes Jack sees things. It's very physically taxing on him, and depending on what he sees, potentially emotionally as well. And right on cue, the beagle starts to come to. He weakly looks up at Sabina and expresses condolences for what happened to her mother. There is a beat of silence, and the girl forces a smile. She tells him it's okay. She's just glad that he recovered. Whitey chuckles, reminding everyone of that time Jack's visions exposed Pugsley for stealing treats from his little brother. Everyone laughs, but Paul abruptly cuts them off. He sternly tells his kids to pack it up, It's time to go home. Red rolls with it, and he wishes them well, but the rest of the animals follow after the family in order to see them off properly at the road. During the walk, the apprentices speculate about the master. They doubt he's gone for good, but it's confounding. What is it that he actually wants? What's he doing all this for? Whitey suggests that maybe he just hates animals, which is as good an answer as any, I suppose. But as they're talking, the orphan suddenly halts. He points out a nearby tree with stark, midnight black leaves, which all seem to be unnaturally vibrating, like a glitch in reality. Everyone starts to slowly back away, but it's way too late. There is a loud swish, and the tree crown explodes, revealing itself to have been a disguise. It's the crows, densely packed together, but now shooting at the group like arrows. The head crow screeches at the others to claw out their eyes and kill them if they can. All except Dimphna. The master has plans for her. Our heroes run for it, ducking and weaving and trying to protect their faces. The little guys are having trouble keeping pace, so the humans swoop them up and keep running. They manage to make it to the family's parked car, but stopping, even for a second, to fumble inside allows the birds to dive bomb them mercilessly. Dimphna shouts to Paul over the deafening cause that he needs to pull out his lighter now. Sabina grabs it from his pocket, and she holds the flickering flame above her head like an Olympian, which is perfect, 'cause in the right hands, even the tiniest flame can become an inferno. The witch cat cries out her spell, and at once the lighter becomes akin to a flamethrower, melting down the crows in a vicious spiral. When the smoke clears, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. That was another close one, but everyone's here and accounted for, so all's well that ends well. Jack tells Paul that he can put him down now, but the man scowls and squeezes him tighter. Sabina asks what the hell he's doing, and something in him snaps. He orders Sabina and Russell to get into the car, and he pulls out his gun on the shocked apprentices. Ace calmly tells him to put Jack down and walk away. It's not too late. With a look of pure hatred, Paul snarls at him to back the fuck off. But Ace tries to call his bluff, inching closer and closer. And right when the husky is about to make his move, the man narrows his eyes and fires 3 shots into the canine. Ace flops to the ground, bleeding out everywhere. And Paul warns his kids that he'll shoot another one if they don't follow his instructions and get into the damn car. So they speed off, and the apprentices scramble toward their fallen leader. The next couple seconds are tense and nerve-wracking. But eventually, Ace begins to twitch, and he starts choking out phlegm. He slowly rises to his feet, but he's no longer the lovable, even-headed dog they once knew. No, he looks like the devil himself, with soulless eyes and bloody fangs. Ace throws his head up and releases a blood-curdling howl. And with that, he sprints away down the road like a guided missile. Dimphna breathlessly explains that he's been captured by that werewolf rage that runs deep through his blood, and there is absolutely no telling what's going to happen next. As this is happening, Paul is chaotically swerving all over the road like a maniac, while his kids tearfully beg for him to stop. Paul snaps at them to shut up. He knows exactly what he's doing. A dog that can see the past or future? Do you have any idea what kind of money people will pay for that? In one move, they can wipe all their debt straight clean. Or what? Did they seriously want to wander around graveyards all their lives? End up like their mother? Huh? Sabina shrieks at him to stop, and Paul slams on the brakes. In the middle of the road, standing menacingly, Ace heaves like a rabid monster. Paul's face twitches, and he presses his full weight on the gas, accelerating at full speed toward the dog. Ace growls, and at the last possible second, he throws himself over the hood of the car, straight into the windshield. The glass cracks, and Paul's head slams into the steering wheel as the vehicle spins out of control, careening straight through the safety rails down a hill. Smoke billows out of the totaled car, but it's not over yet. Like a shark, Ace chomps the rest of the way through the windshield. He grabs Paul by the scruff and drags him out of the car, slamming him against the ground. The husky gets right on top of him, and the man trembles under his hot breath. But right as he's about to maul the guy, Jack pleads for him to stop. Ace pauses, and his face softens. He turns back to Paul and threatens that if the man ever so much as steps foot in Burden Hill again, Ace will kill him right there on the spot, no matter what anyone else says. And with those words hanging in the air, the husky walks away. Jack takes a look at Sabina one last time, but the girl averts her eyes out of shame. And so, the beagle too leaves silently. From there, we transition to another letter entry written by Sabina, detailing the immediate aftermath of all that happened. The official story was that they had hit a deer. No one really asked any further questions. Paul's still not quite right. He speaks more in his sleep than he does when he's awake. Sabina's simply happy that he and Russell made it out of the town. She only wishes that she could say the same for herself. She's been having these dreams of Burden Hill every night. It's always the same dark cemetery where the apprentices lie dead, their flesh flayed from their bodies, and their blood saturating the wicked grounds. Monsters dance over their corpses, and laughter fills the air. Russell tells her it's all just a dream. She truly wishes she could believe that.
Kowalski, analysis.
So that was another Beasts of Burden story, eh? Kind of a big cliffhanger ending there. But what did you guys think? Share your reactions and your favorite moments and your favorite stories in the comment section down below, alright? Unfortunately, as of this video, there's no definitive series ending yet. There are 2 different Wise Dog spin-off series, and one of them does tie into the ending of the last story here, but in more of a happening at the same time kind of way, not like a direct continuation. And of course, it features a different cast of characters than the Burden Hill gang. Maybe we'll do that stuff too, but probably not anytime soon, I'd reckon. Right, so as for analysis type stuff, I suppose I don't have a long one to deliver today. I feel like what I said last time still kind of stands as my overall broad take of the series. I could do a lot of like meta-analysis type stuff, but I feel like doing that by itself may be perceived as kind of inflammatory. even if that's not my intention. So I guess I'll lay off. I guess. It's just one of those days. Okay, I'm not trying to be obscure. I'll give the softest example I can, okay? So for instance, I think there may have been a writerly instinct to overcorrect on rehabilitating Rex, sympathetically speaking, after his rather harsh remark to Pugsley in the first story. But beyond that more meta kind of stuff, don't get me twisted, okay? I'm not suggesting that the stories themselves are beneath serious treatment or lack themes or whatnot. But like discussing Dimpna's trial or what it means as a strictly in-world narrative commentary, that's just not like a thing I typically do here. And that's basically because it's kind of baked into the narration itself. Meaning implicit on my end. Meaning I need a little additional prompting from you guys on that sort of thing in order to know what to focus in on and speak about. Alright, look, okay, I'll say that this volume pushes the apprentices in ways that they have not yet been pushed before. The wise dogs are gone. The adults are missing. And no one's coming to save them. And yet, things keep getting worse and more serious for them. And without higher guidance, all they really have is themselves and each other. Meaning that there's no more new tricks or deus ex machina. If they need to push themselves over the edge, it's largely got to come from themselves. I'm speaking of internal refinement, which naturally entails confronting, and in the best cases, either resolving or making productive one's own inner contradictions, known temperaments, or past sins. So, for example, hatred, insecurity, fear, among the rest, okay? However, the problem for them is that this growth is not done in isolation or, it's not an incubation, okay? They find themselves in a hostile world with various forces actively moving against them. The central tension then being whether or not they can survive long enough to become what they need to be before they get destroyed. But yeah, in any case, I really do hope they manage to continue or conclude the series. It must have been super brutal to read this in real time back in the day. The stories covered in this video came out over the course of like 9 years. But yeah, I suppose that's the nature of the business. As it were, the next two videos will be crossed. Sort of a big jump in tone and violence. But that's what we do here, baby. I'll see you there, okay? But yeah. Until then, I will thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good one.